Welcome to the New Monastics podcast, where we'll be discussing all aspects of the contemplative life and interspirituality in the context of modernity. On each episode, we will choose a topic to explore with one of today's leading teachers or thinkers. The New Monastics podcast is a project of Charis Foundation for New Monasticism and Interspirituality, which is dedicated to the emergence of a newly conceived contemplative life of embodied spirituality and sacred activism.
Welcome, everyone, to the New Monastics podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Deepa Patel, who is sitting in for Netanel today. Hi, Deepa.
Hi, Daniel.
How are you doing today?
I'm feeling both the joy of what we're about to do and the real awareness of the world in which we're sitting and with everything that's going on in it. So this feels like a special moment to do what we're going to do.
Yeah, and the intention for today is to do something a little different than any episode we've ever done. Deepa and I are both big fans of poetry, and so we decided to do a little bit of a poetry share, a little New Monastics open mic with two participants. And so the idea for today's episode is we'll each share a few poems and have a little space to reflect on them. We hope you enjoy. Do you feel like there's anything else that needs to be said before we jump into some poems here, Deepa?
No, I think I can say it as I jump into my first poem.
Beautiful. So please.
So this is a Pakistani-American poet called Aisha Siddiqa. And I feel like this poem for me has really helped me every time I feel lost in what's going on in the world. And of course, in this time, we're living with the most extraordinary, we're living with genocide. Yeah. We're living with the immensity of war. We're living with famine and all kinds of other things. And I think the world is really trying to work out, and we as humans are trying to work out what to do with it. And this poem is the poem when I'm feeling completely impotent and don't know what to do. I read this poem, and I'm so grateful to Aisha for penning it. So, here it goes.
Beautiful.
On another panel about climate, they ask me to sell the future, and all I've got is a love poem. What if the future is soft and revolution is so kind that there's no end to us in sight? Whole cities breathe, and bad luck is bested by the promise to the leaves. To withstand your own end is difficult. The future frolics about, promised to no one, as is her right. Rage against injustice makes the voice grow harsher yet. If the future leaves without us, the silence that will follow will be an unspeakable nothing. What if we convince her to stay? How rare and beautiful it is that we exist. What if we stun existence one more time? When I wake up, get out of bed, my 7-year-old cousin with her ruptured belly tags along. Then follows my grandmother, aunts, my other cousins, and the violent shape of their drinking water. The earth remembers everything. Our bodies are the color of the earth, and we are nobodies. Being born from so many apocalypses, what is one more? Love is still the only revenge. It grows each time the earth is set on fire. For what it's worth, I'll do this again. Gamble on humanity 100 times over. commit to life onto life as the trees fall and take us with them. I'd follow love into extinction.
To your point at the top of the times we're in, I feel like this is such a beautiful answer to the kind of question that you were raising. Not really a question, more of a statement, but there feels like there's a question wrapped up in there of how do we move through these times. And this line that's really sticking with me is, love is still the only revenge. And it's really making me think of just the incredible human beauty and perseverance and fortitude that becomes evident in really difficult circumstances. How even in the middle of war, people are caring for each other and cooking food for each other and having these beautiful moments of human dignity, even in dehumanizing circumstances.
I think I've read this poem so many times, and the line that's really sticking out, because I think it's kind of my prayer at the moment, is how rare and beautiful it is that we exist. And it reminds me of Rabindranath Tagore has this line of, that I exist is a perpetual surprise. And I love that line because it does everything. It brings the awe, it brings the reverence, and it brings that element of surprise. It's extraordinary. It's so surprising. I realize I've used the word extraordinary a lot already, but that sense of how rare and beautiful it is that we exist. And I think that's what I'm really holding on to in bearing witness to everything that's going on, to actually take for a moment the time to connect to each life that's being taken at the moment, to just be aware of it, and that it was so rare and special for the time that it was here. And then I feel like I can face whatever needs to be faced.
Yeah.
So what have you got for us, Daniel?
Well, I think before jumping into my poem, I just wanted to reflect of all the things we take for granted. Our existence seems to be the bedrock of the most taken for granted.
Yeah.
And to enter into a relationship with our own existence and the existence of all the other beings we share the universe with feels like this amazing invitation to wonder and to gratitude. And that kind of relationship is maybe some reservoir of strength, even in really trying and difficult circumstances.
Yeah. Thank you.
So moving in a little bit of a different direction for this first poem that I'd like to share. It's a selection from a very long poem of Jack Kerouac's called The Scripture of the Golden Eternity, which, as I understand it, he envisioned as his attempt at writing a kind of Buddhist sutra. And I wanted to share this poem because I didn't really grow up reading poetry or appreciating poetry. And this was one of the first poems I read as a teenager that had a huge impact on me and felt like it had a really strong kind of transmission quality. And since that time, poetry has been a big part of my life. And so I just wanted to share it as the first thing. It's a little bit long here, but I hope you all enjoy. So this is a poem of 66 verses, and these are the last 3 verses of that poem. I was smelling flowers in the yard, and when I stood up, I took a deep breath, and the blood all rushed to my brain, and I woke up dead on my back in the grass. I had apparently fainted or died for about 60 seconds. My neighbor saw me, but he thought I had just suddenly thrown myself on the grass to enjoy the sun. During that timeless moment of unconsciousness, I saw the golden eternity. I saw heaven. In it, nothing had ever happened. The events of 1,000,000 years ago were just as phantom and ungraspable as the events of now or the events of the next 10 minutes. It was perfect, the golden solitude, the golden emptiness, something or other, something surely humble. There was a rapturous ring of silence abiding perfectly. There was no question of being alive or not being alive, of likes and dislikes, of near or far, no question of giving or gratitude, no question of mercy or judgment or of suffering or its opposite or anything. It was the womb itself, aloneness, Alaya Vijnana, the universal store, the great free treasure, the great victory, infinite completion, the joyful, mysterious essence of arrangement. It seemed like one smiling smile, one adorable adoration, one gracious and adorable charity, everlasting safety, refreshing afternoon, roses, infinite, brilliant, immaterial gold ash, the golden age. The golden came from the sun in my eyelids, and the eternity from my sudden instant realization as I woke up that I had just been where it all came from and where it was all returning. The everlasting so and so never coming or going. Therefore, I call it the golden eternity, but you can call it anything you want. As I regained consciousness, I felt so sorry I had a body and a mind, suddenly realizing I didn't even have a body and a mind and nothing had ever happened and everything is all right forever and ever and ever. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. This is the first teaching from the golden eternity. The second teaching from the golden eternity is that there never was a first teaching from the golden eternity. So be sure.
I love the way you read that.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm right there in that grass and feeling kind of everything that was just spoken of. But there's something about that that one smiling smile, the one adorable adoration. What I love about it is that this has definitely taken me into that space of oneness. You know, out of the formless comes form, but the formless is always in the form, basically, and the other way around as well. Kind of feeling that is so beautiful. So beautiful. To be sure. So be sure. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I think to what you were speaking to before, the question I'm holding and kind of the juxtaposition of this poem and the poem you shared right before is how can this kind of unity and experience of unity not be some kind of bypass of division or hardship, but a resource and a reservoir to help us hold that. And there seems to be some mysterious paradox there that maybe is irresolvable. This sense of perfect unity and this idea of no question of suffering or its opposite or anything. And yet suffering is right in front of us and it's confronting us so harshly. And how can those two things maybe meet and that sense of perfection help be a healing force in a way that isn't washing over anything or disregarding it, but is really truly nourishing.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of also feeling the power of poetry, because I think in the world in which I live, it's very easy to get caught in the mind which wants to solve something and find the way to solve this extraordinary lack of humanity, for the want of a better word. And now as I'm listening to these poems, it's a little bit like I'm not gonna fight from a place of scarcity, but from a place where love is the only revenge, right? Yeah. And then my attitude changes as to how even though I may not know the answer, there's a so be sure that this unity will exist regardless of what's happening, and from it something else is possible.
Yeah, and I think it's significant that we see in the lives of great activists who have a strong spiritual or religious background or ground, that it does act as a reservoir for facing injustice. You know, when we look at Thich Nhat Hanh or Martin Luther King Jr. or Cesar Chavez, these are people with incredible religious and spiritual depth, and it seems maybe only possible to do the kind of incredible burden bearing and work they're doing in the world by coming back to that reservoir. If extraordinary is your word today, I think reservoir is my word today.
Yeah. There's a sense of being lifted out of impotence at the moment. That's what I'm kind of feeling, which I think is important to have.
Absolutely. Well, Deepa, will you share another poem with us?
I will. This poem has been, I don't know, I guess it's been with me. Oh, I have paper in my hand. I was saying to Daniel earlier that there's something about reading poems on paper that just the weight of them really feels important. So you might hear some crackling of paper.
Live sound effects.
Live. I don't know much about this poet, and I don't even know if I need to know much about her, because this poem sort of tells me everything. The poem is by May Sarton, and it's called Now I Become Myself. I think Ayesha's poem is about kind of when in my lostness, sort of remembering that love is here.
Mm-hmm.
And in this poem, it's like coming back to myself and feeling the true essence of my being, and that I exist in this time, and there's a reason for that. And this poem always brings me back to that. Now I have become myself. It's taken time, many years and places. I have been dissolved and shaken, worn other people's faces, run madly as if time were there, terribly old, carrying a warning. Hurry, you will be dead before... What? Before you reach this morning? Or the end of the poem is clear? Or love safe in the walled city? Now, to stand still, to be here, feel my own weight and density. The black shadow on the paper is my hand, the shadow of a word as thought shapes the shaper, falls heavy on the page, is heard. All fuses now, falls into place, from wish to action, word to silence, my work, my love, my time, my face, gathered into one intense gesture of growing like a plant. As slowly as the ripening fruit, fertile, detached, and always spent, falls but does not exhaust the root, so all the poem is can give, grows in me to become the song, made so and rooted by love. Now there is a time, and time is young. Oh, in this single hour I live, all of myself, and do not move. I, the pursued, who madly ran, stand still, and stop the sun.
I feel like open mic vibes. I gotta get some snapping in there.
Woohoo. Yeah.
Oh yeah, this one's really striking me in terms of just what a powerful act it is to just occupy ourselves and to stand in our bodies, especially when those bodies are being attacked directly or indirectly. And just the resource, the reservoir of our bodies. And this last line, I, the pursued who madly ran, stand still, and stop the sun. It's this sense of our times that are frantic, and there's all these forces that are pushing us into this kind of chaotic spiraling, an ever increasing speed and striving after efficiencies. And what an act of defiance to be still. I believe we're both fans of this movement of rest as resistance, right? And this anti-capitalist stance of it's okay to just be, that my worth as a human being is not what I produce or what I do, but that we each have an inherent value. Yeah, that's what's really coming up for me around this.
I love that. I love you saying that. When you mention the rest part, that sense that we can actually just be, it seems to me like it's when we become that still, we can stop the sun, which means that there is an action that comes out of this.
Yes.
It's not like the pathetic kind of woo-woo sort of thing. It's like, here, then what arises from this is immensely powerful. And I think that's why I really love this poem. I say the line, now I become myself, so often. It's sort of a reminder of what it means that has nothing to do with anyone else. So, yeah. I'm really grateful to May Sarton. Wherever she is, I hope she's kind of beaming, down. I don't think she's alive anymore, but that she can. That is the extraordinary thing about how the word lives on, and each one of us will find something different, and therefore what a wonderful gift it is that someone took the courage to write.
Yeah, it's making me chuckle because recently I was just writing for myself, and what came up was something along the lines of, it really is quite funny. It's taken so long and I've worked so hard just to become myself.
Yeah, it is. It's all those hours and other people's faces, and it's
extracting the introjections and the layers of story that are inherited or learned. And it really is quite funny, though. It's like one would think it might be easier to just be oneself. And then I think Kerouac is kind of bringing us to that place of, oh, it actually is easy to be ourselves.
Yeah.
There's almost maybe a lot of hard work before that, or to create the possibility of that.
Yeah.
But in actually just being, it is effortless in a way. And I loved what you were saying about how the just being is also a doing. And that we tend to juxtapose these things. Like somehow doing nothing can do so much.
Mm-hmm.
Standing our ground can have this kind of cosmic or seismic waves that kind of go out of that, and I'm thinking about the difference in feeling of kind of doing nothing in a airy-fairy way, like a floating in space, and then the doing nothing of a tree that is rooted and is still. And those feel like different flavors.
Yeah.
And how it's the tree that is interacting through the soil and through the air with all that's around it and is still connected. And it's not a detachment from, but in some ways maybe a different and maybe even sometimes deeper level of engagement.
Yeah. The engagement comes from two places: a respect for the unknown, and yet a trust in what Hazrat Anat Khan has called the all possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard for me to remember the all possible when I look at some of the situations that we're caught in at the moment. And yet, in where we've got to in our little sharing is that reminder of the all possible. Because I realized that there's a layer of giving up which is not acceptable for the world that we're in, but it's really easy to go into that place like, oh, I've called my MP or my Senate, tried all of these, I've protested, and yet there's something else that's being asked. I know that for myself, another kind of courage that's being asked of right now, and it comes from a now I become myself, because that can take me to actually what I need to do at this time in the world. But it comes from that, the smile, what was the line in Kerouac?
The smiling smile.
The smiling smile, right? It comes from that place, which is, yeah, different. Oh, now I'm excited about what you're going to read next, because this definitely feels like a journey of nourishment in this moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. We did not plan to have the poems kind of correlate in any ways. And so it's fun to just feel what comes up in them coming together in this moment.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying the episode, please consider subscribing to our Patreon to help support the production of the podcast.
Subscriptions begin at $1. All patrons receive access to bonus content, curated resources, and exclusive patron events, including live Q&As.
For more information, please check out the Patreon link in the show notes, and thanks for listening. So the next poem I want to share is a short one from an Italian poet named Patrizia Cavalli. And I've been having a journey with this poet. I was given a book of her poetry that has the original Italian and the English translation. And my mother is Italian. I grew up around Italian, speaking Italian, hearing it, and yet I've never been fluent in it. I was never taught to read it or to write. And so as an adult, I've been slowly trying to gain those things. And so reading these poems in their original and then in the translation has been a really meaningful process for me. And in the midst, I've really fallen in love with her poetry and wanted to share this one with y'all. Like many of her poems, this one is untitled. To get out of prison, do you really need to know what wood the door is made of? The alloy of the bars, the precise hue of the walls? Becoming so expert, you might grow too fond of the place. If you really do want out, don't wait so long. Leave now. Maybe use your voice. Become a song.
I think I want you to read it again.
To get out of prison, do you really need to know what wood the door is made of? The alloy of the bars, the precise hue of the walls? Becoming so expert, you might grow too fond of the place. If you really do want out, don't wait so long. Leave now. Maybe use your voice. Become a song.
I mean, that just gets to life, doesn't it? There's like, wait a minute. You know, I can feel all of the prisons that I put myself in, you know, in terms of the thoughts that just go round and round. And that's because I'm paying attention to what the wood is and to the alloys and the bars. And now I've got comfortable. And why would I let go of these habitual thoughts that I hold about myself, that I hold about another?
Yeah.
It's just, she sort of cuts through all the bullshit, you know? That's what's so brilliant about this. It's like, I feel like I want to live with that, you know, when I wake up every morning, just to read that, to sort of go, yeah, don't do that, because I can see how easily I become fond of the prison. And then I miss singing the song, which I can really feel that sense of longing. You know, part of the reason that you and I are here is that we share this love of Hazrat Nayat Khan as well. And as he was dying, some of the last things that he wrote are just so profoundly beautiful. And there's a particular 2 lines that come up where he says to God, "Before you play your music, please will you let me play my song?" And this speaks to that as well. Like, there is a song in each of us. And what does it mean? Yeah, I'm using song in its biggest artistic expression.
Yeah.
But wow, I love it. It's so like, yeah, don't even try all your crap on me, you know. So thank you for introducing me to this.
Yeah, thank you for hearing it. It's just making me think how humans are funny. We, even when our narratives and the stories we tell ourselves are so uncomfortable or painful, there's a part of us that is so afraid of the unknown, so afraid of a deeper kind of freedom, that we still prefer our little cell, the little box that we have become familiar with. And that feels totally natural. And yet, like you're saying, Patrizia shines a light on it and just shows it for a kind of absurdity that it probably really is.
Yeah, and you know what I'm really getting is the prison that I have created in terms of the situations that are going on in the world, but where I'm so occupied by the wood, as it were, of the door.
Mm-hmm.
It really has to do with this sense of like, oh, there's nothing that I can do, or I don't know what to do. I'm so caught in those words, which is a prison. I'm just realizing what a strong prison it is. And then, of course, how does one operate from that place? We can't. You know, so coming back to some of those activists that you named earlier, they definitely chose to sing the song. So yeah, I feel like I've been caught. which is so beautiful that poetry does that too. It goes, "Hey, you, really?"
Yeah, you've been speaking to this sense of impotence, and earlier you used the phrase, I think something like the all possible.
Yeah.
You know, and those feel really diametrically opposed
Yeah.
in the way in which impotence and that overwhelming feeling of impotence in the face of issues that are so much larger than our personal capacity to solve robs us of the all possible. And from that perspective, and again, I think rather than necessarily escaping the prison to never look back, there's this sense of how stepping out of something gives us better perspective.
Mm-hmm.
How when we're trapped in the room, we maybe don't even see the room clearly, and then we can't properly re-envision how to redecorate, if you will, or to remodel. And how stepping out can then give us fresh perspective and new creativity and strength to go back in to the prisons and maybe help others who are trapped there.
I feel like she's going, my work is done.
Well, I think this leads us to the next poem, Deepa. What do you have for us?
It does, and it's really interesting because I feel like you and I were just pawns in this game of divine inspiration. You were like, oh yeah, let's do this thing with poems, and it was like, oh yeah, which poems would I put? But now that we're actually in it, and the poem that I've chosen is Go to the Limits of Our Longing by Rilke. And just thinking about what you've just read and then coming to this poem and why this poem is important to me, that it really is like, am I willing, one, to feel my longing and then to go to the limits of that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like feeling the design that's orchestrated by the all possible in the way these poems are sort of coming together.
Yeah, a little bit of the sense that maybe less than us choosing the poems chose us.
Right? And not only did the poems choose us, but the poets have their own, little gang wherever poets hang out. And they're like, yeah, come on, let's go with these two. So it's that kind of just feeling the extraordinariness of life. It's definitely the word. All right, so here we go to the wonderful Rilke. God speaks to each of us as he makes us, then walks with us silently out of the night. These are the words we dimly hear. You, sent out beyond your recall, go to the limits of your longing. Embody me. Flare up like a flame and make big shadows I can move in. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Don't let yourself lose me. Nearby is the country they call life. You will know it by its seriousness. Give me your hand.
Deepa, I feel like you were God speaking to me there. I was like, whoa.
Oh. Go to the limits of your longing, Daniel.
Is Rilke a Sufi? It seems.
No, they're all lovers of God, these people, right?
Yeah.
Lovers of the mystery might be more accurate.
Yeah, this idea of going to the limits of your longing and following the seed implanted in our hearts. And I think it takes a lot of discernment to really feel that. And yet a lot of the times, I don't think we allow ourselves to do that. Like, we have so many shoulds. We should on ourselves all the time. And it's a kind of block towards really finding how God is speaking to each of us as God made us, and how God made each of us uniquely and particularly. And kind of to the song from the previous poem, it's that sense that each of us have our own song.
Mm-hmm.
There are no cover songs.
There are no cover songs. I love it, Daniel. Wow.
We each have a unique song, and no one else can sing that song. And what does that mean for each of us? And I think there's this kind of life-denying tendency that wants to put people into these little boxes, as we were talking about, and make these cookie cutter models. And that feels like such a deep disrespect of the beautiful diversity that God creates the universe.
You could really say, in terms of what you've just said, that's at the heart of capitalism, right? It's like utilitarian, you're just going to create the same thing over and over again, whichever thing we look at.
Yeah.
And then here we are feeling like I really feel your unique song right now. And then just thinking about if I was to look at everything that I encounter, even if it's the same thing, I think of the David Wagner poem where he talks about Wren knows each branch. I probably really butchered that poem, but he's but you get what I'm saying. It's sort of really speaking to, it's not just that they're all leaves, but that each leaf is unique.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the ultimate revolution, really, isn't it? That kind of liberation.
In some ways, for sure.
So I give my hand to you as you read your next poem.
The mic pass. Yeah, I just fell into silence there. Feels like in this conversation that's been really lovely and generative, I'm coming to a space where the silence feels like it's present in a large way. As I think came up on another podcast that we did earlier together. And the silence between the words and how there can be no poetry, there can be no speech without silence, without gaps. Or else it would just be like and how we need the silence to appreciate the words and what's being spoken to us. But yeah, with all of that being said, I will share another poem. And the poem I wanted to share is again one that has been with me for some time. And it comes from a great Algerian Sufi master of the 20th century, Sheikh Ahmed Alaoui, who I became aware of through this wonderful book, biography, and exploration of his teachings written by Martin Lings, a Sufi saint of the 20th century, Sheikh Ahmed Alaoui. And in the back of that book, he has some selections from the Sheikh's poetry. And I love the poetry, but it didn't quite resonate for me in that it was all written in this kind of old King Jamesy English, haths and doths and thys. And so with maybe too much hubris, I took it upon myself to take Martin Ling's translations, which are of the original Arabic, and render them into a little bit more modern of English, and took some creative license in a couple of places. So I think it is more or less representative of the actual translation, but it is a little bit different. And before getting going, I just want to say that I think this falls into a kind of Sufi trope of challenging each other around, are you being real or are you being fake? And in this world where there are people who have such profound depth, kind of, who the hell are you? And why do you think so highly of yourself? And this kind of nice challenge that I enjoy. And it is called The Imposter. Have you sensed anything of what they perceive? If you are as they, then authority is yours. But if in yourself you find nothing resembling them, take your soul to task and heed these questions. Have you with one look folded up the world out of sight, witnessing the all-merciful where he is present? Or with one glance effaced other beings from your perception, straying beyond the bounds of all, beyond the heights of heaven and depths of earth? Have you circumambulated the whole universe with the full devotion of a pilgrim? And has that same universe made you its shrine, the holy axis of its reverential orbit? Have the screens before you vanished from you in your honor? Has the cloak been thrown off, the veil set aside? Have you been told, draw near, here is our beauty, welcome, enjoy it as your own at your leisure? Has the summoner summoned you? Have you responded to his command? Have you removed your shoes as one steeped in the courtesies of the path? Has the infinite closed around you on all sides? And when the moment came for union, were you bent on leaning into it? Have you faithfully kept the secret of God after its revelation and robed yourself in the divine qualities? If to these questions you can in earnest answer yes, then all hail. This would be some evidence of nearness. But if not, know you are far from the Lord's presence, and there are secrets not for the many. Stand away from the lore of the folk, for you are not of them. Do not take of the orphan's heritage, committing the most grievous of sins. God finds it hateful to put painted promises in place of deeds. What use is a tongue fluent in empty beauty? What good can be done adorning wounds and not healing them? Is not a cure all that will avail the sick? Is returning not all that will delight an exiled people? Rehearse your speech well. You can talk as they talk, but it's the hornet's wax, not the honeycomb of the bee.
You know what comes, Daniel? It's that idea that the soul in Sufism is thought of as a mirror, you know. And what I want to do is read this poem back to you now that you've read it to me. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Have you sensed anything of what they perceive? If you are as they, then authority is yours. But if in yourself you find nothing resembling them, take your soul to task and heed these questions. Have you, with one look, folded up the world out of sight, witnessing the all-merciful where it is present? Or with one glance effaced other beings from your perception, straying beyond the bounds of all, beyond the heights of heavens and the depths of earth? Have you circumambulated the whole universe with the full devotion of a pilgrim? And has that same universe made you its shrine, the holy axis of its reverential orbit? Have the screens before you vanished from you in your honor? Has the cloak been thrown off, the veil set aside? Have you been told, draw near, here is our beauty. Welcome, enjoy it as your own at your leisure. Has the summoner summoned you? Have you responded to his command? Have you removed your shoes as one steeped in the courtesies of the path? Has the infinite closed around you on all sides? And when the moment came for union, were you bent on leaning into it? Have you faithfully kept the secret of God after its revelation and robed yourself in the divine qualities? If to these questions you can in earnest answer yes, then all hail. This would be some evidence of nearness. But if not, no, you are far from the Lord's presence, and there are secrets not for the many. Stand away from the law of the folk, for you are not one of them. Do not take of the orphan's heritage, committing the most grievous of sins. God finds it hateful to put painted promises in place of deeds. What use is a tongue fluent in empty beauty? What good can be done adorning wounds and not healing them? Is not a cure all that will avail the sick? Is returning not all that will delight an exiled people? Rehearse your speech well. You can talk as they talk, but it's the hornet's wax, not the honeycomb of the bee.
Hearing you read it back to me definitely just brings me to a place of humility and penitence. I'm like, no, I haven't. Oh, like getting on my knees, bowing. I am not worthy. And that's why I love it,
Oh my God. Yes. Even like when you were reading it to me, I was feeling that. And then there's something about the echo of it that feels so important that we stay in that echo until with every reading, it's a little bit like it's a purifying poem, So as we've done this today, I'm just kind of realizing how many different kinds of poems there are in the world, and this is a purifying poem. This is the one you read when all that's needed is to be purified.
Shots fired, as they say.
Right. Sure. Yeah, let me be cleansed, let me be purified of all that is false.
It's bringing up this little Hasidic teaching that one should carry 2 pieces of paper with them. One that says, for your sake, the universe was created. And one should look at that when one is feeling lowly and down and impotent, as we were talking about. And the other piece of paper should say, I am nothing but dust and ashes. And one should look at that when one is maybe feeling a little full of oneself or a little high and mighty or self-righteous. And how, this is a poem that I think in a way carries both things. I find it really inspiring, and I also find it knocking me down several pegs. I'm like, hello, I am nothing, like compared to this great Sufi master. I'm very well aware that, my own experience or anything like that doesn't hold a candle to it. And then there feels like there's these poems that are also about bringing us out of that lowly feeling and inspiring us and reminding us that you are perfect, you are beautiful, and how, like you're saying, there's different kinds of poems and they each have their place.
Yeah. But as you were speaking, I was also just thinking about, you feel like that before this sheikh, and this sheikh felt like that before their sheikha.
Yes.
And then that's so stunning that we can feel that, And in this moment, it feels like the spiritual hierarchies, I use that word very carefully, but that sense of the illuminated souls that exist, are all here at this party.
Yeah.
And ultimately we are all just kind of bowing before the sun while remembering that we are the ray of the sun.
Exactly.
Which is such a thing.
Yeah. It's like, you're proud of what you made? God's like, I made the universe. It cannot compare.
Well, also, not only I made the universe, but I also made the thing you made.
I made you.
Because I made you.
Exactly.
So whichever way you look at it, it's all God's.
Right. And there's something so humbling and inspiring about that.
Yeah.
Wow. Deepa, this has been really beautiful.
Oh my God, yeah.
I think we were worried about how this might play out, and
we were.
I hope everyone listening has enjoyed this as much as I've enjoyed it. It's been really a pleasure to sit with you and to share poetry back and forth. Feels really great.
Yeah, I feel like I might need to do this every, when I'm in that place where I can't make sense of the world and actually nothing makes sense, then it seems like we need to share poetry in those moments to find ourselves again.
Yeah. Well, maybe we will do this again sometime, but
I love that idea.
For now, Deepa, I'm wondering if you can just close us out with one last poem.
Well, this poem is written by Raymond Carver, and he wrote it as he was dying. It's one of his last poems. It's called Late Fragment. And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so, I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth. And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so, I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth.
Beautiful. Thank you, Deepa.
Thank you, Daniel. Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Shout out to friend of the show, Treefort of Golden Turtle Sound, for producing the intro and outro music and assisting with mixing and mastering. Be sure to check out his awesome music and hit up Golden Turtle Sound for any of your audio engineering needs.